Section 1: The setting and relationship background. I never thought my life would take such a strange turn, and it all began so simply. Growing up in a blended family was never easy. When my mother remarried, I suddenly had a new set of siblings. Among them was my stepbrother, Daniel. He wasn't much older than me, just a year apart, and because of that we often spent a lot of time together. At first, I saw him as just another family member, someone who came with the package of my mother's new marriage. But as the years went by, our relationship grew more complicated than I ever expected. Daniel had this charm about him. He was outgoing, confident, and had a way of making people laugh. Everyone in the house seemed to like him, and truthfully I did too. He wasn't perfect, sometimes teasing me more than I liked, sometimes crossing the line with his jokes, but he was also someone I felt strangely comfortable around. We would sit late at night watching movies or talk about school, or even share secrets we never told anyone else. Still, there was always this unspoken rule. He was my stepbrother. That line was there, invisible but strong, and I never thought about crossing it. At least, not until one evening when everything shifted. It was an ordinary day at home. My parents had gone out to visit relatives, and the house was unusually quiet. Daniel was lounging on the couch after a long workout at the gym. I walked past him, and he groaned dramatically, stretching his arms. "My back is killing me," he muttered, giving me a half-smile. "Hey, do you know how to give a massage?" Pause. The question caught me off guard. It wasn't unusual for him to ask me for random favors, but this one felt different. I laughed nervously. "I mean, not really. I'm not a professional." "Doesn't matter," he said, patting the space beside him. "Just help me out. My shoulders are so tight." It sounded innocent enough, and yet something in his tone made me hesitate. But after a moment I shrugged and agreed. After all, it was just a massage, nothing more. Right. I sat down, unsure of what I was doing, and placed my hands on his shoulders. His body was warm, muscles tense beneath my fingers. I started pressing lightly, awkward and clumsy, but he leaned back and let out a relieved sigh. "See, you're not so bad," he said softly. The room grew quiet except for the sound of his breathing. My heart beat a little faster, though I couldn't explain why. It was just a massage, just helping him out. But in that silence, in that closeness, I felt something shift inside me, something I didn't dare to name. By the time I stopped, my hands a little shaky, I realized this was the moment that started everything. A simple request from my stepbrother, one I thought was harmless, but it planted a seed of tension I couldn't ignore. Section 2: The massage begins. The next evening, Daniel brought it up again. "You know, that massage really helped yesterday," he said casually. "Think you could do it again?" I laughed it off, but part of me was curious. Curious about why it felt so different, why I hadn't been able to shake the strange warmth in my chest. Against my better judgment, I agreed. This time, the house was even quieter. My parents were away for the weekend, leaving just the two of us. The air felt heavier somehow, like the silence itself was watching us. Daniel stretched out on the couch, lying on his stomach. His shirt pulled slightly up so I could reach his back. I sat beside him, nervous, but placed my hands on his shoulders again. His skin was warm, and the muscles beneath my fingers twitched as I pressed down. He groaned softly, the sound low and relaxed, but it sent a shiver down my spine. "Harder," he murmured. "You can press harder." I obeyed, kneading his back more firmly. The rhythm of it calmed me, but at the same time my thoughts began to wander. I became hyper-aware of the closeness, of the rise and fall of his breathing, of how strange it felt to touch him this way. "This feels amazing," he said after a while, his voice half drowsy. "You've got magic hands." I laughed lightly, trying to shake off the nervousness. "I told you, I don't know what I'm doing." "You're doing more than enough," he replied, his tone softer now, almost teasing. That comment lingered in the air, heavier than I expected. My hands slowed, unsure of whether to keep going. I could feel the heat radiating from him, and every small movement felt exaggerated in the silence. Minutes passed, and I tried to keep it professional, or at least as professional as a non-professional massage could be. But then Daniel shifted slightly, his arm brushing against my leg. It was a tiny movement, maybe even accidental, but it made my stomach flip. I swallowed hard, focusing on the motion of my hands, but I couldn't ignore the thoughts rushing through my mind. This was my stepbrother. This was supposed to be simple, innocent. So why did it feel like something else? His breathing grew deeper, almost like he was enjoying it too much, and I could sense the tension in the room thickening. What started as a favor was beginning to feel like something unspoken, something neither of us dared to acknowledge out loud. By the time I pulled my hands away, my heart was racing. Daniel looked up at me with a small smile, one I couldn't quite read. Was it gratitude? Was it something more? I didn't know. All I knew was that a simple massage no longer felt so simple. Something had changed, and deep down, I feared it was only the beginning. Section 3: The Strange Turning Point. That night lingered in my mind, replaying over and over. I told myself I was overthinking, that it had been nothing more than a favor between siblings. But when Daniel asked again the next evening, I didn't hesitate as much. Maybe part of me wanted to see what would happen if I kept saying yes. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that made every sound echo louder. Daniel stretched out again, shirt halfway pulled up, his bare skin exposed under the soft glow of the lamp. I tried to steady my breathing as I placed my hands on his shoulders. At first it was the same as before. Slow, firm movements, his body loosening under my touch. But then something shifted. Daniel let out a deeper sigh, one that sounded almost too personal. His hand reached back, gently guiding mine lower, from his shoulders to the middle of his back, then down further. I froze, unsure if I should stop, but his voice came quietly. "Don't stop, that feels good." The words made my heart skip. Every warning in my mind screamed at me, but my body didn't move away. Instead, I followed his lead, my hands tracing muscles I hadn't touched before. The air between us grew heavier. He shifted again, his arm brushing against me, deliberate this time. My skin burned where he touched, my mind torn between pulling away and leaning closer. "This is strange," I whispered, barely audible. He tilted his head slightly, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Strange isn't always bad." Those words sank deep. My chest tightened, my pulse raced. I knew we were crossing a line, one that couldn't be uncrossed, but I couldn't seem to stop. His hand slid back, covering mine for a moment, pressing it firmly against him as if daring me to continue. My breath caught. The tension wasn't just in the massage anymore. It was in the space between us, in the way his eyes lingered when he looked up at me, in the silence that spoke louder than words. In that moment, I realized we weren't just step-siblings giving and receiving a massage. We were something else, something dangerous, something forbidden. When I finally pulled away, my hands trembling, the room felt suffocating. Daniel sat up slowly, his expression unreadable, though his eyes told me everything. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. We both knew something had shifted, something that could never go back to how it was. I left the room that night with my heart pounding, my thoughts tangled. The massage had ended, but what it turned into, what it revealed, was something far stranger than I was ready to face. Section 4: Aftermath and Reflection. The days that followed were heavy with unspoken tension. On the surface, nothing had changed. We still joked, still sat in the living room watching TV, still acted like a normal family. But beneath it all, there was a quiet storm brewing. Every glance felt different. Every accidental touch carried weight. I couldn't shake the memory of his hand guiding mine, of the look in his eyes when I pulled away. It haunted me, made me question what had really happened between us. Daniel, on the other hand, seemed almost casual about it. He never mentioned it directly, but his behavior told me he hadn't forgotten. Sometimes he'd brush past me on purpose, lingering just long enough to make me uneasy. Sometimes he'd give me that same smirk, as if reminding me of the secret we now shared. I felt trapped between two emotions. On one side was guilt. Guilt for even letting it go that far, guilt for betraying the trust of family. On the other side was curiosity, because as much as I hated to admit it, part of me wondered what would have happened if I hadn't pulled away. Nights were the hardest. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my mind. The warmth of his skin, the weight of his hand, the way my heart had raced. It was wrong, I knew it. And yet, the memory didn't fade. I tried to convince myself it had been a mistake, a moment of weakness, nothing more. But Daniel didn't make it easy. He'd drop subtle comments like, "You're pretty good at massages, you know," with that same knowing look. Or he'd stretch out in front of me, waiting, as if daring me to offer again. I never did. Not after that night. Couldn't. The line we crossed once was already too much, and I feared what would happen if we crossed it again. Looking back now, I realize how quickly things can spiral. One small request, a massage, had led to something strange, something I never imagined would happen. It wasn't just about physical closeness. It was about boundaries, about how fragile they can be when emotions get tangled in ways they shouldn't. I still carry that memory with me, though I wish I didn't. Changed the way I looked at him, at myself, at the idea of family. It was a lesson in temptation, in secrecy, in how dangerous it can be when curiosity overrides judgment. Daniel never spoke of it out loud, and neither did I. It became our silent secret, buried beneath everyday life. But silence doesn't erase what happened. It lingers, waiting in the spaces between words, reminding me that one innocent favor ended in something far stranger than I ever expected. And that was the truth I could never forget.